and my grandmother and my bachelor uncle from about a mile out of town made it in. The Athmans made it. They live across the block. And then the Olicks, and we don't know how they made it. They really live out in the country, but they made it, and that was it. That was all of us. There was maybe 13, 14 of us there. And it was 8 o'clock, and Father wasn't there, and we were getting to get worried, and we didn't have a phone in the church, so we were going to send somebody out to, to go call, when suddenly you hear this roar outside. And sure enough, my dad looks outside, and Father Tim has shown up on a snowmobile. He's driven all the way from Georgetown on a snowmobile to make it for Mass. I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten a priestly commitment to his people in saying Mass. From that moment on, everything changed for me, but not least of all because he came in with the snowmobile boots and the snow suit and the helmet, and he took a look at me. I was the only really kind of young kid who could do this, and he looked at Robert, you're serving this morning. I never served before. And so I went with him into the sacristy, and he's on bed. I didn't know the first thing to do. He took his time, he told me what to do, and we got through Mass fine. I was too young to be scandalized, but I did think it odd when he asked to consume the rest of the wine after Mass. Saying something about, I got to stay warm on the way home. I'm sure that was true, I just didn't know better. But that was the day, and then his commitment to us, the relationship to family and home. But the moment that I, honest to heavens, can tell you, was when I finally said I want to be like him, was he picked us up in his car, which was always a miracle that it was running. But he picked us up in his car at the elementary school and bring us over to Felton for catechism. And Felton is just, a snoo spit away from Ulen, so we were all Norwegians except for us few Catholics, and so there was only 2 of us that he picked up for catechism in the grade school, Mark Bosch and myself. Now Mark he wasn't a dwarf, but he was a really tiny, tiny little kid, even as a grade school kid. Fragile, tiny little kid. I am as you see me today. I was not tiny. But Mark sat on the end of the pew. We were in the second pew, and Father stood in the front, and we had our Baltimore catechisms, and we were on the lesson of actual grace. And in a classic Father Tim catechetical method, which you don't find in books today, Father Tim came around and grabbed Mark Bosch, tiny little Mark Bosch, in a headlock. And all I could see was his torso and legs kind of dangling in the air. And he's got him in a headlock, and he says, the purpose of actual grace is God drills a hole in your head. And he's given Mark a noogie in the head. And I can just hear this tiny whimper. And then he pours his knowledge into your intellect, and you know what you should do. I swear to God, I looked from my seat in the pew at Mark in the headlock on the lesson of actual grace, and I thought, I want to be like him. That was the birth of my vocation. And he always was my spiritual father. He took time with me after Mass, every Mass, to let this little kid hang out with him and answer his questions. I'd walk with him to the car. I realized that I was serving a purpose because he made me pick up all the used Kleenex out of the pews on the way out because he didn't like doing that. But he was my spiritual father and always was so. And it was one of the great days of my life. At my ordination night, at the parish when the priests greet the newly ordained and embrace the newly ordained priest. This man embraced me and whispered into my ear, "Now you're just like me." And I will forever be grateful for that.
Okay, who wants to follow that?
Another boy, Robert. Thank you.
The mic is open.
I'm Dawn Home. I just want everybody to know that although his living location has changed, Father has not changed. The other night I was visiting him at the nursing home, and Sunday evening, and a nurse came by, the evening nurse with the nightly mess, and he yelled at that nurse, "Hey lady, you got any extra pills?" And then he pointed at me and said, "She needs them."
Now you think I'm thrifty, don't you?
All right, anybody else like to say anything?
Well, I've been going for my loud voice for a long time, haven't I? I probably don't need, I'm like Father Tim, I probably don't even need a microphone. But I always will remember, and I never will forget, that I talked to him about going to confession, and he'd say, "Well, did you pack a lunch?" And of course I said, "Yes, I did." By the way, thank you for all the years that you were with us.
I'm truly not worthy. I thought I'd say, "Whoa, hello." I inherited a little of Father Tim's voice. So, I just thought, as a family representative, thank you so much for loving our uncle. Sorry, I wasn't going to do this. But like so many of you, you all have good families and parents and stuff. We not only had our parents, we had the weekly tribunal. And we all got together. Most of the time it was on Tuesday evenings. And the two priests would come in, and we had an uncle who was a lawyer. And our aunt lived in town, and she would come over, and then our family, and occasionally the family from the Twin Cities. And let me just tell you that, you know, when you had to campaign with your family to get something or whatever, not only did it have to pass muster with your parents, it had to pass muster with Uncle Joe and Father Dan and Father Tim and whoever else happened to be there. So, and then after we had the tribunal every week, the next morning, the priest had to say Mass at way too early o'clock in the morning. And my sisters and I had the joyous pleasure of being the kids that could play the piano. So we were always there. And did they celebrate Mass? No. It was twice in a row. Again, that way too early o'clock in the morning for teenage children. But anyway, so